It's funny, isn't it? It's like the West is painted as the best place to raise your child. Every African aspires to have their child, raised either in the West or under the Western curriculums. They're seen as having the highest of highest standards across all industries and sectors, having the best education, best healthcare. And yet, I was just thinking that if you put a Western child in Africa, I do not believe that many of them would be able to survive. Like if you just pick them up and put them here, many of them would break down. Many of them will find it very hard. Now, if we talk about Africans, if you put an African child in the West, you better believe that they will find a way. They will find a way. They won't be complaining about what's owed to them. They won't have a sense of entitlement. They will get up and they will find a way. And it was actually yesterday, I was at the supermarket and I bumped into somebody that I knew. And she was talking to me about the fact that even though she'd never been to Africa before, her parents had taken her back to the Caribbean. So it got me thinking about the fact that, I was born in Nigeria. And when I was young, my parents migrated to the UK. So I was raised in the UK. But when I was able to, my mum rather, did encourage me to, go back to Nigeria. And I have been back a few times. We both found similarities in our stories, and the idea that the fact that our parents took us back home had made the transition to Africa a lot easier, because we had been exposed to so much. There were certain things that, wouldn't bother us like it would for, a Western child who has never been to a third world country. And I'm very grateful that my parents encouraged that. I'm grateful that my mom encouraged that always. And that's why I'm saying, take your kids back to Africa. Take your kids back to the Caribbean. Take them back to where you're from. Because even if they decide to never live there, there are lessons that they learn. They're exposed to so much. And it doesn't even have to be for long periods of time. In terms of going back to Nigeria, I've been back for 3 months at a time. I think I did a 3-week visit once. I did a 6-week visit. So, just taking them back when they're young really helps them with some real life survival skills. It really does. And again, I look at some of the mums here. I look at mums like myself who have younger kids. So as you guys know, my son is 5. And I compare them, I compare the young kids to the older kids, like the 16-year-olds and the 14-year-olds. And I see a huge difference in how they acclimate, I see a huge difference. It's very clear that for the young ones, there's no doubt, it's a lot easier for them to transition than it is for the older ones. And I know that there are so many other things that ties into that, but I'm saying that to say, if we as diasporans in the West, if we start taking our kids back home every so often, and start exposing them to Africa, to the Caribbean, because, there are a lot of similarities. I've met so many people of Caribbean heritage here who say, it's just like being in the Caribbean, and to them, it's nothing. They can they can deal with the dirt roads. They can deal with, seeing cows on the street. It's not a shock. Those things aren't a shock to the system, and so it allows them to then focus on the bigger issues, and it makes it a lot easier for them to acclimate. Actually, I remember going back to Nigeria with one of my good childhood friends, and she's Jamaican. She's from Jamaica. She'd been to Jamaica before, and she came to Nigeria with me, and that was her first time in Nigeria. But she was like a trooper. Like, I didn't hear obviously, there were certain things that made her uncomfortable because she was still raised in the UK, but she was able to handle it. Like, she didn't have any breakdowns, she was able to handle it, and I think back to that time. And I remember recently having a conversation with her about her coming, and I really believe that it's because she'd been back to Jamaica. She'd been back to Jamaica before, and so a lot of the things that come with being here just didn't faze her as much as if I had taken one of my other friends who have just always only known the UK and vacationed in Europe, I think that there would have been a huge difference, and I doubt they would have been able to handle some of the things that we went through. We look back on it and we can laugh now, but it made us like very strong people. It made us tenacious, something that I believe is really, really missing from kids nowadays. So, if we start bringing our kids back to Africa, start showing them little bits of the culture, even if it's just, we do this a lot in Nigeria, where if a family member's getting married, we come back home, like, take your kids with you, take them with you, and let them experience your culture raw. Let them experience what it's actually like on the ground, not just hearing your stories, because it's not quite the same. And the other thing I'll say is, like, make sure you show them both sides. And everybody knows what I mean by that. Show them both sides. Show them the village, show them the rough parts, and show them the most affluent parts that you won't even find in the West. Like, make sure you expose them to both parts, because I really, really appreciate that my mum did that. I got to see both sides. I got to live where I already know that I have some friends in the UK, they would not dare stay, let alone like live and spend the night in some of the places that, I've been to. But I also know that there are some places that I've seen in Africa that would run circles around mansions in the West, in California, in New York, in London, So I believe that type of exposure, as early as possible, and even as often as possible, even if it's once a year, once every 2 years, like, it makes a difference. It really, really does. And I think that's going to help them. That's going to really help, not just help their exposure, but just help them be a lot more open-minded, because especially in the times that we're in, like that, being open-minded and being able to adapt is so important now more than ever. And so, helping our kids and showing our kids as early as possible and exposing them to Africa as early as possible is us helping to set them up for survival, in my opinion. I'm sure that there are many of you that agree with me that, you know, if we really think about it, if we bought an African, you bring an African anywhere, take them anywhere, Australia, Canada, UK, and they could be illegal. They could have not one dime cobble to their name. They could have nothing to their name. And you watch them. And they will survive. They will find a way to feed themselves. Not only will they survive, they will thrive. Before you know it, in the next 10, 15 years, they would have found a way to get their residency. They would have started a business. They'll be working 2 jobs. They'll be raising a family. Like, they will survive. Now, the question is, can we really say the same for kids that are raised in the West? I don't know. I don't know if I can really stand up for Western kids like that. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can say somebody who's born and raised in the West. You know, I think about some of my friends again, you know, that some of my close friends, you pick them up from where they are and bring them here. I don't think that there are many people that will survive. They would be breaking down. They'll be blaming the government, blaming their family, blaming their parents, you know. Like, they wouldn't know what to do. They really wouldn't. So I say all of that to say that, you know, Africa's not as bad as they make out, really. Because when it comes down to it, that is the most important thing. Being able to survive, being able to feed yourself, being able to fend for yourself, with or without government, with or without the extra support. Now, it's great, and I'm not saying that, you know, there aren't great things about, I'm grateful that I was raised, you know, and exposed to the West as well. But I'm just saying that us Westerners, especially those who have moved from Africa and have gone to build a better life in the West, don't forget about back home. Don't forget, bring your kids back home, bring them back, show them back home, expose them. Because really, that to me is setting them up for survival. And what's more important than that? There is nothing more important than that. And so I just wanted to, you know, this is something I was thinking about. I just wanted to share it with you guys. I would love to know what your experiences have been. Are you taking your kids back home? Is this something that you're considering now? I know that there's a huge movement. There's a massive exodus to Africa right now. But I'm sure that there are others who are just sitting on the sidelines watching. But yeah, take your kids back to Africa. Because if you can make it in Africa, you can make it anywhere. If your kids can make it in Africa, they can make it anywhere. So, yeah, just my thoughts for this evening. I'd love to know what yours are, and if this is something that's crossed your minds at all, and how you're preparing your kids for survival. So, thank you for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.